let's take another question. Mademoiselle, with the headband.
It's for Neil.
Yeah.
My question kind of has two
It is
parts.
fair.
The first part is Ireland kind of has quite rich folklore and history and stuff like that. So have you ever thought about writing a book set in Ireland? And the second part is because location is always such a huge part, like in your stories, like American Gods and everywhere. How do you choose them? Like.
So the question was in two parts, one of which is Ireland has this amazing, rich, folkloric, mythic, and mytho-historic past, and have I ever thought about doing an Irish story that really is Irish as opposed to the tiny chunk in American Gods? And the other is so much of my stuff is in some way location dependent, and have I ever thought about doing something set over here? The only Sandman book that never happened was a project that Dave McKean and I were going to be doing. And it had a working title, although this wouldn't have been what it would have been called if it had actually come out, of blue and orange and green. And they were going to be, one was going to be set in the folklore of the Pacific Islands, and that would have been the blue one. And green, obviously, would have been the one set over here. And the book never happened. So all I can do is apologize. So that was where I was sort of going to do the Irish stuff was going to be there. It's odd, I suppose, that I haven't done something really solidly set over here, because I do an awful lot of the writing that I've done has actually been done here. I am lucky in having some friends with more houses than they have bodies. And one of my friends who has more houses than she has bodies is Tori Amos, who has this absolutely wonderful house that she rarely gets to in Kinsale. And when she was recording whichever album it was of hers that she made, was it Boys for Pele?
Yeah.
It was. Boys for Pele was recorded over here and down near Cork, and she fell in love with the house and she bought it then. And it's been great. So I wrote chunks of American Gods there. The only time I've ever had to type in gloves. With a peat fire, as far as I could tell, somehow absorbing heat from the road. Because it was actually ever so slightly warmer if you backed away from it. And even the Graveyard Book. Although with the Graveyard Book, I actually made the Graveyard Book wasn't written there. And it wasn't written there because in 2007, the end of whatever tour I was doing, I went there, and instead of writing for 3 weeks, I had a flu. And it was the kind of flu that you're convinced will be fine tomorrow. And what I actually wound up doing was doing very little other than every 3 or 4 days, I would drive into Kinsale and buy a chicken. And some carrots and some onions, and then I'd bring it back and I'd make enough chicken soup to last me for 3 days. And I'd phone home and they'd say, go to a doctor, and I'd say, I'll be fine tomorrow. And I wasn't, and eventually I went home and just at the point where I was actually ready to recover. But I love it there. And how you pick locations to write, I don't know. They sort of, normally they sort of bite me, and suddenly I get a little obsessed by a place. And
Just one of the things that got me asking that question was just because somebody told me that the TV program Supernatural took a lot of its kind of ideas from American Gods, because they go around to
I keep hearing that Supernatural, well, at least with Supernatural taking stuff from American Gods, the guy who created the program has said in many interviews that he was inspired by American Gods to me, which I think is so much nicer than the stuff where I wind up looking at something and going, you got that from me. And which happens from time to time, and That's much more when I run into the creators of those things and they look all embarrassed. Or they get stuff signed. One of the two.